Good afternoon, students. Welcome to the Analyst, dated 19th of December 2023. Today we'll look at 5 important articles from the Indian Express and the Hindu. The first discussion will be regarding floods in Tamil Nadu. Then we'll look at the suspension of the Member of Parliaments. Then we'll look at why and how the market turn around, not only in India but around the globe. Then we'll look at India's Arctic expedition and we'll look at electric buses. The first discussion is regarding the floods in Tamil Nadu, and this pertains to your GS1 geography. Now, we must appreciate why this has happened. So, the primary reason of flooding is inundation. Inundation of channel capacity. Now, what do I mean by both these words? Inundation. So let's say I have a small beaker. In that beaker, I can store 100 ml of water. But if I pour 200 milliliter of water, what will happen? It will overflow. So this is nothing but inundation. And when I'm saying channel capacity, I'm saying how much water can this beaker hold. So if I have excess water, or my channel capacity has somehow decreased. Why it will decrease? Let's say you have a river. In that river, we are dumping a lot of waste on a daily basis. What do? We create a lot of waste and that waste is being dumped. So let's say this is a river and this is the channel. So gradually over the period of time, we are depositing a lot of waste. So if we are depositing this waste, what will happen? The space that is left for water to flow, that will decrease. So I have essentially decreased the channel capacity. Or I can give more water to this river. How that can happen? The best or the most usual suspect is rain, heavy rain. Now, rain is a usual phenomena. Why? Because India is a monsoon country. But what happens when there is variability? Variability in rain. That means, let's say I am expecting the rain to happen in the first week of December, but it happens in the second week of December. Another point is that there can be change in intensity. So intensity of rain, if it changes. So let's say I am expecting 100 millimeters of rain in next 3 days. I am expecting 100 millimeters of rain in next 3 days. But what happens is, in a single day, tomorrow itself, I get 100 millimeters of rain. Now on 10th of July, what did we do? On 10th of July, we discussed in the Analyst the incessant rains in Himachal Pradesh. And now we are witnessing the incessant rains in the peninsular India. That is in Tamil Nadu. Now, this incessant rains is partly because of monsoon, but partly it is because of the change in intensity and variability. Partly it is also because of change in channel capacity. But most importantly, it is also a very good example. It can be a very good case study if we are referring to, let's say, climate change. And this will give us a lot of examples of urban flooding, flooding in general, and flash flooding. So the three words at times are interchangeably used. Do not confuse between the terms. One is flash flood. The other is urban flood. And the main keyword is flood. So what we were discussing was flooding. When the same flooding happens in an urban setting, in an urban area, in a city, so it will be urban flooding. It will be urban flooding. And when this flooding happens instantaneously in a very short period of time, we'll call it flash flood. Sudden flood is flash flood, right? Now, to understand the mechanism of how it is happening and why it is happening in the month of December in Tamil Nadu, we must appreciate the southwest monsoon cycle. So, what happens is that in India, we have a low pressure system, a low pressure system. This low pressure system is developed during the summer months. And we know that equator is somewhere here. Now, ideally, what should happen? That all along the equator, the trade winds should converge. The trade winds should converge. That is the ideal scenario. But because of the tilt of the earth, and what happens is that some portions of the earth are more illuminated than the others. So during summers, what will happen? During summers, the northern hemisphere will be facing the direct heat of the sun, and more so, it will be the Tropic of Cancer. The Tropic of Cancer will have direct sunlight of the sun. Okay. Now, once that is happening, what will happen? That this low pressure belt, which was supposed to be on the equator, it will shift northwards. And these winds, the trade winds, will have the tendency to converge with the migrated equator. Why did the equator migrate? Because of the tilt. So let's say the tilt is like this and the tilt is like this. Now what is happening? Here we have sun. So which part of the earth will receive more heat? Can I say this part? On the other hand, here it will have more heat towards the southern hemisphere. So this part, that means this area will have the most amount of heat. So here the northern hemisphere is getting the most amount of heat. Here the southern hemisphere is getting the most amount of heat. So when the tilt is towards the sun, the southern hemisphere is towards the sun, it is summers there, and here the tilt is towards the northern hemisphere is tilted towards the sun, so we have the summers here. Now if you have the summers in India, when do we have the summers in India? Yes, the summers usually start after, let's say, the month of March. March, you will see the heat, the more torrid times they start. Now once that starts, what would happen to the convergence zone of trade winds is that they will start to migrate. They will start to migrate northwards. And as they migrate northwards, so gradually these winds will also migrate with them northwards. And as these winds will migrate northwards, what will happen? Let's draw a single diagram. And there we can understand that with the migration, what can happen? So let's say the low pressure system is now on India during the summers. So what will happen to the winds? The wind will try to cross the equator and to come towards India. Now over the period of time, what will happen? These belts will go further north. So these winds will also go further north. And these winds will try to enter India. Now, can we say that these winds are coming from water areas? They are coming from water areas. And if they are coming from water areas, they will pick some moisture. Now, that is the explanation of ITCZ. So, we are looking at trade winds. We looked at trade winds. And we looked at ITCZ. The low pressure belt that is formed over India during summers is the tropical convergence zone. So this is the ITCZ for you. Now, this is a low pressure system, but the winds are not able to clearly enter India until another factor which is called a jet stream. So this jet stream is called the subtropical westerly jet stream. Subtropical, jot it down, subtropical westerly jet stream. The moment this subtropical westerly jet stream, it is able to migrate towards north. So this STWJ has two arms. One of these arms will be cancelled, it will be nullified. The moment this second arm is nullified, these winds will be able to enter India. And the moment they enter India, this is nothing but a burst of monsoon. So this burst of monsoon will start from Kerala and it will start approximately in the first week of June and it will go on to September. Now, how do they circulate is, how do the winds finally enter India? Let's say this is the Arabian Sea branch. So they are entering India, then you have the Bay of Bengal branch and they will be mixing together, they will be coming together by the end of September. And from the September, what will start happening? The pressure belt, which was a low pressure belt, it will again come back. So now it will migrate downwards. Now it will again migrate towards the equator. So because of this oscillation of intertropical convergence zones, what will happen? Now these winds will try to come here. The trade winds, they will try to come here. And eventually they will try to come down south. Right? Now think about it. And in the first instance, what was happening? In the first instance, the winds were here. Then during summer, the winds were here. The summer intensified more. So now the winds were here. What are these winds? Trade winds. But after the monsoon has culminated, what will happen? Again, the pressure belt will come down to this place and again there will be convergence. Then later it will again come back to this place. So this is nothing but the migration of pressure belts. And because of this migration of pressure belts, first the winds will enter India and then they will start coming back to India. So this coming back of winds, and let's say now the pressure belt are here. So now what will happen? What went into India as winds coming from a high pressure zone to a low pressure zone, these winds are now reversing. These winds will reverse. And that is why we call monsoon as the seasonal. What do we call monsoon? The regional and seasonal reversal of winds. The seasonal and regional reversal of winds. Now that being said, can we now say that this is the low pressure belt? And we know that winds will travel from high pressure to low pressure. So now what happens is that this area develops as a high pressure cell. And from this high pressure cell, the winds will come in this direction. And these winds are called the retreating monsoon or the northeast monsoon. They are the retreating monsoon or the northeast monsoon. Now, Tamil Nadu is located on the eastern coast of India. So, if we look at the eastern coast of India, what do we see? We see that there is this coastline is indented. Now, if I draw a line which is parallel, I draw lines which are parallel to India's coast. And what are these winds? These are nothing but northeastern winds. And you can write in bracket, these are nothing but your trade winds itself. Now, when the winds were coming to India, they were bringing moisture. Now, will these winds have moisture? Because they went and they did a lot of rainfall all around India. Now they have moisture or not? They lack moisture. So they are mostly dry winds. But if these winds are again entering the sea, so what will happen? Will they pick some moisture from the sea? Will they pick some moisture from the sea? Yes? So if they pick some moisture from the sea, what they will do? They will deposit this moisture in Tamil Nadu. So parts of Tamil Nadu, parts of Andhra Pradesh, and particularly the eastern coastal plains. What did I say? The eastern coastal plains. They tend to receive rain from the northeast monsoon. And so this can become a very good prelim question, that which regions of India receives rain during the winters. So the answer is Tamil Nadu. The answer is Andhra Pradesh. The answer is eastern coast of India, eastern coastal plains. And if you wish to know, the eastern coastal plains are more wider and they are present beyond the eastern Ghats. They are more broader plains. On the other hand, if you see on the western side, the western coastal plains, they are more narrower and steep. So this particular monsoon that is happening in Tamil Nadu is because lots of these winds which are which have the orientation of northeast, they are taking moisture from some low pressure systems. Now you'll say, sir, what is low pressure systems? Sir, you know that there are so many depressions, cyclonic activity which are already present in the Bay of Bengal. If a wind, sir, is going towards this direction, can it interact and can it get some moisture from these depressions? The answer is yes. And can it then deposit it in Tamil Nadu? The answer is also yes. So that is why, sir, we have some deposition of rain in these regions. Now, let's look at the second article, the suspension of Member of Parliament. Now, this pertains to your Indian Constitution GS2. Now, what has happened is that 78, not 1, not 2, 78 Member of Parliaments, they have been suspended. Now, why is someone suspended? Maybe because of bad conduct, because of wrongful conduct, because the decorum was not maintained, etc. That is what we know from our common sense. Now, let's look at the main reason. The main reason is disruption. The main reason is disruption. Now, some of you will confuse it with another keyword that we use is creative disruption. Now, can you just tell me what do you mean by creative disruption? Can you just write in the comments what is creative disruption? What do you mean by creative disruption? Now, let's discuss disruption first. So, we are debating, both of us, okay, we are interacting, we are debating, we are discussing. Now, in that discussion, in that deliberation, in that debates, it can be heated, it can be acerbic, it can be very mild, it can be very polite. But there is certainly a conduct, there is certainly an etiquette of a discussion, a mannerism that you carry yourself. Similarly, whenever I am talking about the parliament, can I say the parliament, the legislature and the judiciary are nothing but they are three organs of the state. They are the three organs of the state. And what do I mean by state? State as defined under Article 12. So these three organs of state, they have some amount of independence. They have some amount of independence. In their own domain. And they have some checks and balances on each other. Now let's say in one institution, in a single institution, after having all the checks and balance, I have some independence. I have some freedom of speech and expression. I have some what is called is parliamentary privilege. That is, the court cannot get into what is happening in the parliament. The executive should not have anything to do with what is happening in the parliament. There is some limited domain, some space, some independence which is vested with the parliament. And this is the limited parliamentary sovereignty that we have. Because we do not have absolutely, one institution is not having the entire power. You cannot usurp the power from other institution. But there is some limited sovereignty that is vested with the parliament. Now when we say the parliament, can I say this limited sovereignty or some freedoms which are in excess of our fundamental rights, they are vested with our parliamentarians, right? What are these? So if we compare the freedom of speech and expression of a parliamentarian with a commoner, with me as a citizen, so I would say that a parliamentarian will have a higher freedom of speech and expression. They will have more immunities from the parliament. They will have more privileges from the parliament. Because they are having these privileges, immunities, because they are part of the parliament. Right? Not as an individual member, but because of the position that they hold. Now, if I use such privileges to discredit the same institution, or to create ruckus in the same institution, or to create some instability in the same institution, then can I be liable to some punishment? Yes. So if the institution is giving you some freedoms, the institution can also punish you. So the parliamentary privilege also gives the institution the right to punish its own members. And here what is happening is that disruption is being used as a political tool. Now when I say disruption, I would say disturbance, noise, maybe using placards, maybe affecting the day-to-day work of the parliament of a particular session. So if that is happening as a pattern, what would happen? Some disciplinary action can be taken. It is a valid ground. Now, this disruption has become a common tool. It has become a common tool to affect the workings of the parliament. And it also affects the productivity. But there are some counter opinions. Why do we need such disruption? One school of thought says that if your voices are not heard, if you're not heard properly, if you're not given the opportunity to speak, if you are not, or if you are ignored all the time, just because you are opposition, that gives them no choice but to disrupt the house, for the house to go for adjournments time and again. So that is what is happening. So usually the priority will be given to government officials, to ministers. Then the government is in comfortable majority. So they tend to ignore, after every successive strengthening of power, they would tend to ignore the opposition. And then the opposition is also fragmented. So they cannot have a proper representation in the opposition as well. Then the political parties, they always like the limelight. So the political party, they would also like, and as an individual, if I am a politician or I am a political party, I also want to be in limelight. So naturally, if I disrupt or give some speech, because I am not allowed to give some speech, okay, I am not able to participate in the debates. So what I'll do, I'll disrupt and then come into the news. So there is naturally fight for the limelight. Then there is lack of immediate action against disruptive MPs. And at times what happens, that today the people who are sitting in the treasury bench, they were earlier in the opposition. When the people who are in the treasury bench, they were in the opposition, they also disrupted the parliament. So it has become more of a tradition of the opposition to disrupt the parliament. Now, who has the authority? That is our moot question. Who has the authority in this particular question to go for suspension of these member of parliaments? So it lies with the speaker in case of Lok Sabha and the chairman of Rajya Sabha. So the head of the house will have the power to go for suspension. Now, in accordance with the rules, now the speaker can direct a withdrawal for disorderly conduct. So they would ask some member to temporarily withdraw themselves from the house. And then they can name and suspend a member for persistent obstruction. Then there is automatic suspension for gross violation or severe charges. Then the presiding officer again can invoke suspension. So here there is no debate or discussion. The authority more so in most of the rules, it lies with the presiding officer. Whoever is the presiding officer can take the call on the suspension. Then the chairman can suspend a member for the session. Now, what do I mean by suspension? So the maximum period can be the remainder of the session, and the suspended members cannot enter the chamber or attend committee meetings. Now, we are discussing something which is happening inside the parliament. So it is part of the parliamentary privilege as well as the parliamentary discipline. So when I say suspension, it is part of the parliamentary discipline that has to be reinstated, and the parliamentary privilege which have to be protected, because if there is no discipline, then where is the privilege? Now, it also leads to loss of rights to give notices, to ask questions and to receive replies. Then it also gives you the immunity under Article 122, that the parliamentary proceedings are immune for court proceedings, except, and there is a caveat, and it says that except, and this is coming from the Supreme Court, that except when there are some procedural lapses. When, let's say, I have laid down that this particular procedure will be followed for the suspension and that has not been followed, then naturally there is need of some adjudication. Let's start with the third article, that is India's Arctic expedition, and this pertains to your GS3 environment. Now, the Raman Research Institute RRI will participate in the first Indian expedition to the Arctic region during winters. Now, how this becomes important is that all the countries around the globe, especially the aspirational countries, the developed countries, they would try to set up some research stations in the Arctic region. And now there are multiple reasons for the research that we'll discuss. But the moot point is that these research centers are usually, they are not working during the winters. But now what will happen is that India's research centers, they will start working in the winters as well. So this institute, the RRI, is an autonomous research institute founded in 1948 by Indian physicist and Nobel laureate Sir C.V. Raman. And this works under the Department of Science and Technology because it is directly funded from DST. Now, this will be for the first time that researchers will examine the characteristics of radio frequency environment in the Svalbard region. Now, where is Svalbard? So, Svalbard comes in news because of multiple reasons. One is, in the Svalbard, we have something related to the seed. Can you tell me what is there in Svalbard that is extremely famous and extremely important for prelims? Yes, we have some vault or something. Yes, seed vault. Now, in Svalbard, we also have, and Svalbard is nothing but is a set of islands. It's a set of island, and these set of island together they are called the archipelago. The archipelago. Now, we are talking about the North Pole. We are directly talking about the North Pole. And for some mapping purposes, you can look at the nearby countries that are there. So we are looking at North Pole. So the maps will be looking a little different. So this is Russia. And Russia is interested in North Pole. Why? Because there is oil, there is gas, and it is very easy to travel in this direction. It decreases the cost of shipping. So that is why Russia is important. Russia is looking at Arctic, and it is of geopolitical significance also. Then you have Canada, you have US with its Alaska, you have Greenland, you have Iceland, you have Norway, Sweden, Finland. So all these countries, they are bordering the North Pole, and the world over, all the important countries, they will have some research center in the Arctic region, and most of them have chosen the Svalbard region, which is part of Norway, So this Svalbard archipelago is part of Norway, where we have kept majority of our seed vaults, where we have kept majority of our research centers pertaining to glacial climate. Now, let's look at how India started to engage in this region. So, India's engagement with Arctic dates back from 1920s with the signing of Svalbard Treaty in Paris. Now, what does this Svalbard Treaty mean? So, this Svalbard Treaty is the acceptance, that this particular islands, the Svalbard Islands, they are part of Norway. However, the sovereignty of Norway is not like any other territory. For example, if you want to go for research, so it is open for research for everyone. Then there is no arms build-up in this region. So there are multiple clauses so that the world can take the benefit of this region, but the overall sovereignty lies with Norway. So you do not need a visa to travel to this region. So that is your Svalbard Treaty. Now, India is one of the very few countries to set up a permanent station in the Arctic for such purposes. And when did it start? It started in 2007 and 2008. But the moot question is, what is the need? Can you tell me what is the need? Why do we want to go to such a place and then set up these research stations and send our people there and make them face the hardships of the climate? What is the reason? Yes, the most important reason. Can I say that we are looking at climate change and we are simultaneously witnessing wildfires, which are sometimes called as zombie fires? Zombie fires. Fires which are going in these regions, in the icy regions, in the permafrost regions, zombie fires which are going below the earth. They are not particularly visible, but once the ice melts, these zombie fires, they will be visible. Then are we looking at permafrost, thaw? Are we looking at glacial melting? IPCC in its AR6 said that this is one of the 9 tipping points. And what do I mean by tipping point? That means that these are the regions which are facing the max wrath of climate change. So can I say, because of climate change, it can also release, the region can release greenhouse gases which are trapped below the surface, below the earth. Because of ice, these gases are trapped. They can be released. There can be wildfires. There can be glacial melting. There could be permafrost thawing. Thawing means melting. So all these activities we have to research about. Why? Because now more than ever, the impact of climate change is visible on human beings on a daily basis. So that is the need for study of Arctic region, because it gives us a sample study of how glacial climates operate, how glaciers have evolved. What is paleoclimate? What do I mean by paleoclimate? What was the climate like in the past? How the climate changed? And has the climate changed the way we are witnessing right now? Has it changed in the past? And if it changed, how did it affect the vegetation? How did it affect the biodiversity? Were the animals king? Was there any extinction of animals? Do we have some fossils which can tell us about it? Right? Now, some important prelim related pointers we need from this particular slide. This is for your information, your Svalbard archipelago. Now, so the first center was in 2008 and it is called Himadri. Then in 2014, India went for IND-ARC. So these terms can be used to make prelims question. Then in 2016, you have Gruva Bardet, and this is also in Svalbard. So these are different locations. Then India became an observer to the Arctic Council. It became an an observer member of the Arctic Council since 2013. And every 5 years it is renewed. So we got the membership renewed also. Now, can you tell me what are the 8 members? What are the 8 members of the Arctic Council? And if you can make a mnemonic out of it, it is extremely important. Again, it can be asked in a prelims question. What are the members? Which of the following are the members of the Arctic Council? And let's say I can give India in one of the options. So India is not correct. It is an observer member. It's not a permanent member. Okay. Now, then we also launched in 2022, we went to launch the Arctic policy. Why? Because we want to go for research and development. We want to promote. See, whenever we invest in research and development, whenever we send our scientists to, let's say, the CERN labs, we are sending our scientists to CERN labs, right? We are sending our scientists to Arctic Ocean. We are looking at Antarctica. So all these regions, or let's say there is some research in the glaciers of Himalayas. So what happens is the dividends of these research, they can be extraordinary. Not only in terms of climate change, but also in terms of industry. So we learn about so many, let's say, natural vegetation which are able to withstand such climates, right? So that helps us in, let's say, building some jackets, some shields for our space rockets. So you get a lot of inspiration from nature. Now, in the 2022 Arctic policy, what happened is that we wanted to explore Arctic, we want to go for research and development, and we also wanted to look at Arctic as a tourist destination. So that is India's involvement in Arctic. Recently, we have seen a market turnaround, not only in India, but across the globe. And we have seen Nifty, the Nifty 50 index of India touching all-time highs. And this also happened in the US, and the index of the US that we know most popularly is the Dow Jones Industrial Average. So the Dow Jones and the Nifty 50, it reached an all-time high. Now that means there was a slump. That means there was a bad timing, and from that the market rose. So the bad timing was because of multiple reasons, which is very important for us to look at the last 2 to 3 years of how things were evolving all around the globe. And this gives us a macro perspective on what lied behind us and what can come ahead of the curve. So what happened is with COVID in place, all the governments around the world, they had to give in a lot of liquidity. They had to spend billions of dollars to fund their citizens so that they do not go bankrupt, they are able to support themselves. Similarly, a lot of companies also wanted to declare bankruptcy, and so a lot of banks had to bankroll them, and the government also had to bankroll them. That means pumping of trillions of dollars, and this happened in majority of the countries, and it happened mostly in US. So pumping of more than $2 trillion. Now whenever you get scared, whenever the markets get scared, whenever there is some scary scenario, what happens is that the markets readjust. So the markets readjusted. But after the COVID-19, the recovery was, at the start it was fine. But later on, it was seen that the recovery was also slow. And parallelly, what we are seeing are wars which started between Russia and Ukraine, and gradually it was increasing in terms of how many players were playing the war. And the war also became an energy war. So the cartel, that is OPEC, tried to cut down on the overall production. Why? Because during the COVID they didn't earn anything. So post COVID recovery, they wanted to make the most out of this recovery. So they did not increase the production size, and OPEC and OPEC plus as a cartel, they kept, or they limited, or they cut the amount of crude oil that is entering into the market. Simultaneously, Russia was cutting what? The gas pipeline, the Nord gas pipeline. So all of this is happening parallelly around the globe. And once this happens, so Russia would start an energy war. How come? Because I, as a European citizen, I would require more fossil fuel. More fossil fuel when? During winters. And so if the gas pipeline, the gas supplies, they are snapped. So what will happen? The global prices of oil and gas, it shot up. And it shot up from all the way from $0 during COVID to $100. So with the rise of, so what we have is red hot inflation. Red hot inflation and slow recovery. That slow recovery, that means not all the parts of the economy are growing. And in economic survey, we saw a term, that is the K-shaped growth. Rather than V-shaped growth, some sectors of the economy, they are performing very well. Some sectors could not just pick up. And this happened across the globe. So you have slow growth, chances of possibly a recession in the US, in the global markets, including Europe. And you had the chances of a red hot inflation. Why? Because the energy prices, they went up. Simultaneously, the biggest player, that is China. China started to strategically maneuver its exports. It started to limit the exports, such as critical minerals, such as metals. So because of these fluctuations, and because China wanted to again be Atmanirbhar for its own supplies, and there was a global push all around this resource-rich country to have more at hand than to trade. So more protectionism was growing during this time. So what happened? The prices of oil, gas, metals, it all shot. Now, because of this, if you have a very high inflation, what would happen? That the Fed, the US Fed, or what we know as the Central Bank of United States, they started to increase the repo rates. They started to increase the repo rates. Now, if you increase the repo rate, what happens? You are sucking out the liquidity, and you only provided the liquidity to the markets. You only provided the bank rolls. You only provided the direct benefit transfers. Now you are sucking out the liquidity. So there was this liquidity suck in form of increase in interest rates. So this interest rate cycle was going on. And as it happened in the US, so was mimicked in the European regions. So was mimicked in India also. Why? Because if the other country is raising the interest rate and I'm not raising the interest rate, then money will flow from India to the US for want of better returns, right? If I am increasing the interest rate, that means I will ask for more money if you go for a loan. But counterwise, if give me your money, then I'll give you, rather than 4%, I'll give you 5%. Rather than 5%, I'll give you 6%. Right? So the moment the interest rates are higher, you also tend to get more returns on your banks. So rather than parking their money in India, they would park their money in the US. So whenever the US would increase the interest rate, the world will also increase the interest rates. Right? So this was going on, and because of which majority of the money, the global liquidity, the foreign institutional investors, the foreign portfolio investors, they went for a flight of capital, and there was flight of capital as high as 2 to 3 lakh crores from India. And it happened across the Asian regions, across the emerging economies, and this money went back to the bonds of the US, of the United States, because they considered it the most safest in terms of crisis. And this stance of US is called the hawkish policy of the Fed chairman. Now, can someone of you tell me who is this most powerful man? What is the name of this most powerful man? He is one of the most powerful man in the world because he changes things overnight. As the Fed chairman, the hawkish Fed chairman, what is his name? Right? Just tell me. Now, what changed? So, over the period of time, what we are seeing is that the inflation in US, in India, it is decreasing. In India, the WPI has decreased and has almost went into 0% category, then just seeing some spikes. So, what we are seeing is now the inflation is in control, and now even if there is a new war, that is the Israel-Palestine war, but the economies had shown a lot of resilience, grit and strength. And because of this, continuously there is a pause in a rate hike. Rate hike, that means pause in increase of repo rate. Now, this has been replicated in India also. So our RBI governor also did not increase the repo rate, but possibly in the next few meetings of the MPC, the Monetary Policy Committee, or the FOMC in the US, what can happen is that there can be a rate cut which will increase the liquidity. And the moment there is increase in liquidity, that is a good news for any naysayers, who were saying that the economy can suffer from recession and possibly not grow to the expectations of the world. Now, because of this is a global reason. But what happened? India also recently saw some elections. Because of that, political stability was reinstated and the taxation is buoyant. So if we are growing at, let's say, 7 to 8%, I am saying real growth. So we are actually growing by, let's say, 12 to 14%, nominally speaking. But what our net direct taxes, they are saying, we are growing at almost 20%. So taxes are growing at 20%. So that kind of extra buoyancy that we have today gives the government that extra cushion to go for capex investment. And during 2015 and 2016, the banks were of poor health because of the NPA crisis. So the private sector, they did not go for capex, that is capital expenditure. So the government had to do majority of the capex by construction of highway, expressways, railways, renewable energy. So all these hardcore, core, port, energy, logistics, extremely core businesses which are capital intensive, government went for massive capital expenditure. But now what is happening, that along with rising taxes, the resilience of economy, the capex cycle of companies are also picking up. So now the world is looking at a more resilient growth going forward. And therefore, the foreign institutional investors and the foreign portfolio investors are back to India, and they have taken us to the all-time highs. And the grit and resilience of the rest of the markets has also shown that the resilience of Indian economy, and India is outshining the other emerging markets, more particularly when we compare with China. because of the Atmanirbhar push and the move towards a 5 trillion and a $10 trillion economy. Let's look at the e-bus penetration, and this pertains to your GS3 economy. Now, when we are looking at electric bus, so what CRISIL has said that we will double the number of electric buses that are there in India. So if we are looking at the public transportation today, 4% of all the buses that are operating as public transport, they are electric buses, and they say that this will double. Now, what do we know about CRISIL? So CRISIL was created as today it is a credit rating agency. It is a credit rating agency, CRA. Now, this credit rating agency today is indirectly owned by Standard & Poor, S&P Global. But earlier, it was created as the first credit rating company in 1988 by ICICI UTI and SBI LIC and United India Insurance Company. But later on, with a bulk buyer from Standard & Poor, it is now owned by the S&P Global. Now, why do we need to go for this electric buses? Because it is part of public transport, and if we are looking to decrease the carbon intensity, we want more and more people to use public transport. And if more and more people are using public transport, then we will also decarbonize or reduce the carbon or go for zero carbon, because these are a part of our Panchamrita goals. So we need to decarbonize what? Decarbonize our transportation. And this is also the part of this push, is also part of the FAME, which is the faster adoption and manufacturing of electric vehicles, as well as the National Electric Bus Program, NEBG. Now let's look at all the initiatives that the government is taking to promote the electric buses. So, or to go for electrification in terms of transportation. So FAME had a phase 1, now FAME has phase 2. This is also called as FAME 2. So they are encouraging adoption of around 7,000 buses, then 5 lakh three-wheelers, which are electric three-wheelers, 55,000 passenger vehicles, and 10 lakh two-wheelers. Now this is also through expanding EV charging network, and here we have the greats of Tata also entering into the charging sector, so private sector investment in this region is also accruing, and simultaneously what do we see? That there is also upfront benefit in purchase of private EVs. Then there is the PLI scheme for automotive sector. Then again the PLI scheme for advanced chemistry cells, which are essentially powering the EV transition, because we need two pillars. One is the electric vehicle tech, which is software dependent, and then there is the mechanical components. So software, mechanical components, and lastly we need battery. So these three sectors, they require a lot of research and development. Then the GST on EV has also been reduced, and the battery operated vehicles, they are exempt from a lot of permit requirements which are usually for the other vehicles, and they are given green license plates. So that is all from my side. I hope it is helping you. Thank you so much.